Welcome, and thank you for taking the time to learn about FireIE. Fire safety in the UK is no longer about producing a one-off annual fire risk assessment. Two pieces of legislation now demand more from the accountable person, and in this short presentation we will walk through what's expected of you. The Regulatory Reform, Fire Safety Order 2005, and the Building Safety Act 2022. Together, they demand more evidence in terms of effective fire risk management, something that outdated paper-based fire risk assessments are unable to achieve in isolation, continuous evidence-based reporting and shared fire risk management across the whole life of a building. In the next few minutes, I'll walk you through what the law aims to achieve and show you how FireIE helps the accountable person and principal accountable person, along with stakeholders who may be connected to a building, stay compliant, reduce risk, and improve fire safety. Let's begin. Here's how we'll approach this. I've broken the overview into 6 short modules. We'll start with the law itself, the 2 regulations you have to satisfy. Then we'll look at stakeholders and the golden thread of building information. From there, the practical heart of fire safety, managing your assets, your fire doors, and your maintenance regime. We'll cover fire risk strategy and assessment, then the question of competence. Who is allowed to do this work? And finally, how everything ties together into evidence, audit trails, and the safety case. Each module maps a specific legal duty to a specific FireIE capability. So by the end, you'll see not just what the platform does, but why it matters for your compliance. Let's start with the law. Module 1. The legal landscape. Before we look at any software, it's worth being clear about what the law actually asks of you, because FireIE is built directly around these duties. There are 2 frameworks. The Regulatory Reform, Fire Safety, Order 2005 is the foundation. It applies to virtually all non-domestic premises and the common parts of multi-occupied residential buildings. Then, sitting on top of it, the Building Safety Act 2022, which create a whole new regime for higher-risk buildings. The key thing to understand is the direction of travel. Both regulations have moved decisively away from the idea of a report you produce once. They now assume you are actively managing risk, keeping records, and able to prove it at any moment. That's the shift FireIE is designed for. Let's look at each in turn. Let's put the 2 frameworks side by side. On the left, the Fire Safety Order 2005, your foundation. If you have control of non-domestic premises or the common parts of a block of flats, you are almost certainly a responsible person under it. Your core duties: take general fire precautions to keep people safe and carry out a suitable and sufficient fire risk assessment. One that you keep up to date, not one you do once. And note the change the Building Safety Act made here. You must now record your significant findings, your arrangements, and your fire safety information regardless of how many employees you have. On the right, the Building Safety Act's new regime for higher risk buildings. Broadly, those 18 meters or 7 stories and above with residential units. Here you have accountable persons who must assess and manage building safety risks on a continuous basis, produce a safety case report demonstrating those risks are controlled, and, critically, maintain a golden thread of accurate, accessible information about the building. Notice what both columns have in common. Assess, manage, record, keep current, prove. That's not a filing exercise, that's a live management system. And that's precisely what FireIE provides. So, where does the old way fall down? This is the heart of the case for FireIE. For decades, fire safety compliance has meant a PDF. An assessor visits, writes a report, hands you a document, and that document starts going out of date the moment it's signed. The actions inside it get copied into a spreadsheet or an email chain, and then they drift. 6 months later, can you prove the remedial works were actually completed? Can your contractor, your building safety manager, and the fire authority all see the same current picture? Usually not, and when an inspector asks the modern question, not "show me your report," but "show me the state of this building right now," A static PDF report has no relevance anymore. It's simply not enough to satisfy legal obligations. FireIE closes that gap. It turns the assessment into a living record. Every finding becomes a tracked action with an owner and a due date. Evidence, photographs, test results, certificates is attached and time-stamped. Everyone connected to the building sees one shared source of truth, and because it's continuously maintained, you are regulator-ready at any moment, not just on the day the report was written. That's the shift from a document to a platform. Everything in the modules that follow builds on it. Module 2. Stakeholders and the Golden Thread. A building isn't managed by one person. Over its life, it passes through the hands of architects, principal designers, principal contractors, subcontractors, building owners, managing agents, building safety managers, residents, and the Fire and Rescue Authority. The Building Safety Act recognizes this explicitly. It talks about accountable persons, about handover of information between phases, and about a resident engagement strategy. The problem the Act was written to solve is that these people have historically worked in silos, with information held in incompatible formats, on paper, or lost entirely at handover. The review that led to the Act called this out directly. The golden thread of building information was broken. FireIE is, at its core, an information exchange platform. The name itself, Fire Information Exchange Platform, tells you that. Let me show you how it brings every one of those stakeholders into one shared, controlled record. FireIE lets you identify and log every building stakeholder against the building itself. On the left, you can see the roles the platform is designed around, and these map directly onto the language of the legislation. Architects and principal designers who hold the original design intent and the fire strategy. The principal contractor and subcontractors who carry out works and, crucially, log changes and completed remediation. Building owners and managing agents holding overall accountability. The building safety manager coordinating the safety case day to day. Residents who, under the amended fire safety order, must be given relevant fire safety information and a way to raise concerns. And the Fire and Rescue Authority itself, who can be given a clear current view of the building's history. Now, the obvious question with all these parties in one system is, who can see what? That's the panel on the right. Access is permission-based and role-based. A resident sees their engagement information, a contractor sees their works, the fire authority sees the compliance history. Secure single sign-on and two-factor authentication protect the data, and every access is logged in an audit trail. So, instead of information scattered across a dozen organizations and inboxes, you have one shared record with the right walls in the right places. This slide is about one of the Building Safety Act's central ideas, the golden thread. The Act, and the review behind it, identified that building information is too often incomplete, held on paper, and inaccessible to the people who need it, and that this makes it impossible to manage safety across a building's life or to understand whether changes have compromised the fire strategy. So the law now requires a golden thread, accurate, accessible information created at the start, kept current, and handed on. FireIE is designed to be where that thread lives, across all 4 stages you see here. At design, the fire strategy, drawings, materials, and design intent are captured. During construction, changes and substitutions are logged and controlled so they aren't lost at the handover that historically broke the chain. In occupation, the safety information is maintained, updated, and evidenced continuously, and when anything changes or is reviewed, that alteration is recorded and flows through to the safety case. The point is that the thread is never broken and never goes stale. Each stakeholder adds to it, and each inherits an accurate record from the phase before. That's exactly what the Act asks for, and it's very hard to achieve with documents in folders. Module 3, Fire Safety Assets and Maintenance. This is where the legislation meets the physical building. Article 17 of the Fire Safety Order places a clear duty on the responsible person. The premises and any facilities, equipment and devices provided for fire safety must be maintained in an efficient state, in efficient working order and in good repair. That covers a lot. Fire extinguishers, alarm and detection systems, emergency lighting, fire doors, signage, sprinklers, dry risers. Each has its own inspection and testing regime, and post-Grenfell, fire doors in particular have become a focal point of enforcement. The challenge is visibility and evidence. Can you demonstrate, asset by asset, that every statutory inspection was done on time by someone competent and that defects were fixed? FireIE was purpose-built to answer exactly that question. Let me show you. Here's how FireIE delivers on that Article 17 maintenance duty. The title at the top is the legal anchor. Fire safety equipment must be maintained in an efficient state, in working order and in good repair. FireIE operationalizes that duty across 6 capabilities. First, total asset visibility. Every fixed and portable fire asset across every site in one register. You can't maintain what you can't see. Second, statutory inspections are scheduled and recorded to hit the legal testing intervals. Weekly alarm tests, monthly emergency lighting, annual extinguisher servicing, and so on can all be managed using QR codes generated from the system. Third, automated reminders mean a service date is never quietly missed. The system prompts you before it falls due. Fourth, defect reporting. When an inspection finds a fault, it's raised straight to the mechanical and electrical or maintenance team, with photographs. Fifth, QR and RFID tagging. Scan any physical asset and instantly see its full history, location and service record. And sixth, every asset can carry its linked fire risk assessment and supporting evidence. The result is that for any piece of fire safety equipment in your building, you can produce in seconds a complete and current maintenance history. That's the difference between claiming compliance and evidencing it. Within maintenance, some inspections attract particular regulatory attention, and fire doors top that list. This slide covers the checklist engine. FireIE ships with 5 ready-to-use inspection checklists shown on the left: fire door inspection, emergency lighting checks, cool point checks, smoke detector and alarm testing, and emergency evacuation drills. These are the recurring statutory checks most buildings need, and they're structured so an inspector on the ground simply works through them on a phone or tablet. No paper, no rekeying later. On the right is what you get out of each inspection. A defect found during a check can be reported instantly and automatically routed to the maintenance team. Damage photographs and notes are uploaded on the spot, so the evidence is captured at the point of inspection, not reconstructed afterwards. Every completed check contributes to demonstrating compliance under the Building Safety Act. Findings can generate a fire risk assessment, and actions and reminders are assigned automatically. And if your building has needs beyond the standard 5, you can build your own bespoke checklists as an upgrade. The principle throughout: the inspection isn't finished when the box is ticked. It's finished when the evidence is captured and the follow-up action is owned. Module 4: Fire Risk Strategy and Assessment. If there is one duty at the very centre of UK fire safety law, it's this one. Article 9 of the Fire Safety Order requires the responsible person to make a suitable and sufficient assessment of the risks, and, just as importantly, to review it regularly to keep it up to date, and whenever there's reason to think it's no longer valid or the building has significantly changed. The Building Safety Act reinforced this, and for higher risk buildings, layered on the accountable person's continuous duty to assess and manage building safety risks. Notice the words review and keep up to date and continuous. The law has never actually wanted a document that sits on a shelf, but the tools available made that the default. FireIE changes the tool. It treats the fire risk assessment as a living strategy. Findings become actions. Actions get owners and dates, progress is tracked, and review is built in rather than forgotten. Let me show you how that works in practice. This is the engine room of the platform, the living fire risk assessment. Follow the 4 steps across the top. They form a continuous loop. Assess. The fire risk assessment is captured digitally and aligned to publicly available Standards 79, and you can conduct multiple risk assessments across multiple sites. Act. This is the crucial one. Every finding in that assessment doesn't just sit as a paragraph of text, it becomes a tracked action with a named owner, a priority, and a due date. Monitor. Progress on those actions is visible on a live compliance dashboard, so you're managing from real-time status, not chasing a spreadsheet. And review. The assessment is kept current. Reviews are prompted, and changes to the building are captured, so it never quietly goes out of date, which is exactly the failure Article 9 is trying to prevent. If that Assess, Act, Monitor, Review loop sounds familiar, it should. It's the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle from ISO 9001, and it's precisely the continuous improvement discipline the Building Safety Act's safety case approach expects. And as the strip along the bottom shows, this scales. If you're responsible for a portfolio, FireIE manages multiple fire risk assessments at once, and a single dashboard shows the live compliance status of every building. So fire risk strategy stops being a stack of separate PDFs and becomes one coherent, continuously improving picture. Module 5. Competent People and Contractors. One of the most significant changes the Building Safety Act 2022 requires persons in the built environment industry to demonstrate competence. The responsible person must facilitate improvement in competence and should not appoint anyone who is not deemed competent to undertake a fire risk assessment or works unless that person is competent to do so, meaning they have sufficient training, experience, knowledge, and other qualities to do it properly. And more broadly, the order has always required the appointment of competent persons to assist with the preventive and protective measures. The safety case report goes further still, requiring evidence that the people who worked on the building and who assess and maintain it were competent to do so. So, competence is no longer a soft aspiration, it's an evidenced legal requirement. That means you need records. Who is trained in what, when it expires, and which contractors are approved. FireIE holds all of that against your people and your buildings. Let me show you. Here's how FireIE lets you evidence competence. Start with the team directory. FireIE holds every team member's details, role, and responsibilities in one place, linked to the buildings they work on. Against each person, you can link their training records, fire training, first aid, and any specialist qualifications. You can record their certificates and licenses, each with an expiry date, and this is where automation earns its keep. FireIE triggers reminders before that training or certification lapses, so you never end up with someone quietly operating out of date. Under the old fire safety order, the requirement was to have competent assistance. Keeping a live alerting record is how you make sure that competence is real and current, not just historical. The same logic extends to your supply chain. You can log your approved contractors and hire firms, the assets they're responsible for, and their approval status. So, when work is done on the building, you know it was done by an approved party. And it works the other way too. The platform automates on-hire and off-hire notifications, which also helps control higher costs. Pull it together and you can produce, on demand, evidence of who did what on your building and that they were qualified to do it. That's exactly the kind of proof the safety case regime asks for. Module 6. Evidence, Audit, and the Safety Case. Everything we've covered so far, stakeholders, assets, assessments, competence, produces one thing that the modern regulatory system prizes above all: evidence. The Building Safety Act's higher risk regime is built on the Safety Case Report, a document that must demonstrate that building safety risks are being actively and adequately managed. And even outside that regime, the amended Fire Safety Order now requires records to be kept, and enforcing authorities, the Fire and Rescue Service, can ask you to show compliance at any time, backed by alterations notices, enforcement notices, and prohibition notices with real penalties behind them. The question that decides your position in any inspection, insurance review, or investigation is simple. Can you prove it? FireIE's design means that because you've been managing day-to-day inside the platform, the evidence assembles itself. Let me show you how that final piece works. This slide is the payoff. On the left, the things a safety case and a fire authority inspection actually expect to see. On the right, how FireIE supplies each one, because you've been managing inside it all along. Records of maintenance, inspection and testing, that's your time-stamped asset service history from Module 3, the latest fire risk assessment with evidence of actions taken. That's your live FRA from Module 4, with every action tracked through to completion. Evidence of the competence of those involved. Your training, license and approved contractor records from Module 5. A resident engagement strategy and the provision of information to residents. The resident portal and shared information from Module 2, and a clear current picture for the regulator. One dashboard, exportable and accurate at any moment. The important insight here is that none of this is a separate compliance exercise you have to gear up for before an inspection. Because the day-to-day management happens in FireIE, the evidence is a byproduct. It assembles itself. When the fire authority, your insurer, or an investigator asks, "Show me," you're not scrambling through folders and email. You open the platform and it's all there, current and connected. That's the whole proposition. Manage fire safety properly day to day, and compliance proof takes care of itself. That brings us to the end of the overview. The message I'd leave you with is this. UK fire safety law has fundamentally changed what it asks of duty holders. The Fire Safety Order 2005 and the Building Safety Act 2022 no longer accept a static report. They expect you to assess and reassess, to maintain and evidence, to use competent people, to keep a golden thread of information, to engage residents, and to prove all of it on demand. That's a genuinely demanding standard, and it's very difficult to meet with documents and spreadsheets. FireIE exists to make that standard achievable, and honestly, to make it easier than the way you're probably working now. It brings every stakeholder, every asset, every assessment, and every record into one secure living platform. So compliance stops being a periodic panic and becomes something you can simply demonstrate at any moment. The best way to see whether it fits your buildings is to see it with your own data in front of you. I'd warmly encourage you to book a demonstration and consider enrolling on our new training course aimed to equip those responsible for fire safety with the legal and regulatory requirements under the law. Thank you for your time, and I hope you found this useful. Any questions? Please get in touch.